And we're back with another episode of Self to Society. I'm your host, Dennis Gable. This is a very special episode for me. If you've been tuning back in, you'll notice that there's a new variety of topics that I'm talking about. It's not just mental health and my journey through that, but it's expanded into business, faith, mental health. Some of the things that define me are not always the easiest to articulate in a 30-second story on Instagram or a minute and a half reel. And so I sadly don't talk about this nearly as much as I should because there's so much wrapped up in it for me. I created a tool called 52 Card Pick Me Up. I also created a journal called the Pick Me Up Journal. And creating these tools came at a really interesting time in my life. The purpose behind them is to help quickly align your parts of your story. Could be a very recent, current part, could be something in the past, could be something really beautiful or something traumatic or something that you just need to tackle that you haven't tackled yet. It could even speak to something in the future, although I don't necessarily believe that's the point of the tool. Not saying it couldn't get you there, but it's not necessarily the point of the tool. 52 Card Pick Me Up was designed during a time where I was having a really difficult. It was designed during a time when I was having a difficult time that was challenging to put together in words, really identifying how I was feeling, what I needed to pay attention to, what parts of my journey were the ones that I needed to be focused on in order to heal at the rate that I was wanting to heal. Listening to Self to Society or following me on Instagram or finding my website or YouTube or something, it's not a hidden story that I have A, made a lot of really dumbass decisions in my life, and B, been through a relatively fair amount of traumas or experiences that I've needed to seek healing from. I think specifically in regards to the journey of mental health, insofar as it's not a part of your daily journey now, the experience of walking into that journey of mental health is A, relatively challenging to get yourself there. B, it's confusing as hell because if you spend any amount of time on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, you've got 50 billion people talking about 50 million different things that you can do. What I would suggest is that you start directly where you are. You take the day that you decide you want to start this journey, you start that place, that moment, that day with something that is not wildly overwhelming. Meaning, if we could rank trauma from 0 to 10, which we can't really do because trauma is relative. This is not my idea. This is not a new idea. But trauma is deeply relative to the person who has the experience. So you could line up 5 people in a line, and they could all tell their stories. And we could objectively say, well, person number 1 has experienced way more trauma than person number 3, and person number 2 has had a much easier life than person number 4, and we could do that objectively. However, the relativity of trauma specifically speaks to the idea that what you have experienced, you have felt traumas. No matter how they weigh against other people's stories, your traumas are yours and they're real, and nobody can take them away from you, and nobody should diminish them because they don't quote unquote equate or equal up to somebody else's story. That's a hard pill to swallow on 2 sides of the coin. One, if you feel like you haven't quote been through a lot, then it's challenging to believe that you have traumas or that your life is hard or has had pain. And if you've been through a lot, like actually physically been through a lot of trauma, it can be challenging to look at people who have had quote easier lives and find the same sort of empathy. So what I'm begging you to do as we start down this journey is to give yourself and everybody else the grace to feel what they feel without the expectation that it is a deserved response. Meaning, If you've experienced a high level of trauma, physical, emotional, sexual, relational, those things are real. They are challenging. They are painful. If you have not experienced a great deal of physical trauma, but maybe you've experienced a great deal of emotional trauma and some physical trauma, right? Like, that is still real. It's worth discussing. It's worth putting on the table. So have enough grace for yourself on either side of the pendulum to embrace your own story and the story of other people. As my dear friend Tomas J. Stanton likes to say, the closest distance between two people is in fact their story. Having grace for your story gives you a wildly greater ability to have grace for somebody else's story, which ultimately is the only way that we get along as a society, right? The only way that two people can choose to coexist is by having grace on themselves and having grace on other people, because we're so different and our experiences are so vastly unique that when we enter into this conversation, it's easy to get misguided or off track or a little bit disillusioned because your story is not like somebody else's. I want to set this straight for you right now. Your story is valid, your experiences are valid, your traumas are valid, and so long as you're willing to own your part of any and every scenario that you've been in, that's not a push blame sort of statement. It means, here's an example. Which story do I want to tell? I literally had like 7 things run through my mind. So physical abuse as a child, any abuse as a child. Was I a smartass to my dad? Sure. Did I deserve to get my ass whooped with a belt because I was a smartass? Probably not in the way that it happened. So what I'm not saying is if you have experienced traumas specifically physically or sexually as a child, please take all of that weight off of you. That's not what I'm talking about when I say you need to own your part of your traumas. Now, another scenario is I was unfaithful to my ex-wife. We both played a part in our marriage. She did not play a part in me choosing to be unfaithful. I chose to be unfaithful in and of myself. I caused myself shame and certain traumas by going through a myriad of experiences in that particular scenario. And so I have to own, A, that the scenario was what it was. The picture painted is real, but also that I made decisions because I was making them. Because I was selfish, because I was hurt, because I was any number of things, I still chose to make that decision. That's what I'm saying when I say it's important that we own our part of certain traumas. Now, choosing to go down a road of healing and health and a journey means there are going to be a lot of blind spots. There are going to be a lot of parts in our life that we look at and go, shit, I just don't remember exactly how that went or exactly how that played out. Or I don't remember exactly what happened to me or to the situation. And that's the work between you and a therapist. There are many types of therapy. I have a few that I deeply enjoy. The first that I deeply enjoy is just, what is the name of the therapy? Anyway, it's cognitive behavioral therapy. There we go, CBT. Cognitive behavioral therapy would suggest that we, in our mind, with the help of a therapist, especially at first, have the ability to cognitively recall and reprogram certain parts of our life. I've also been deeply involved with EMDR, eye movement eye movement desensitization and reprocessing is what EMDR stands for. And essentially it uses both light and physical distractions in order for us to dig a little deeper in our brains and get to a more root part of that story. And it gives us the ability to rewrite how we felt, what the outcome was, how we now process that memory. It's extremely powerful. And my newest therapeutic love is called IFS, which is called internal family systems. It would suggest that each part of your behavioral mechanism is a person or plays a role, and we can speak to and heal those internal family parts individually. It's they're all complicated in their own right, but I have been a part of all three. I've practiced all three. I have, in large form or short form, studied all three, and they're all helpful. Somatic therapy is another therapy that I practice. It would suggest that in order to connect to your emotional, you should also connect to your physical. So it has prompts like tapping and having a physical touch related to how we're feeling with certain parts of anxiety or triggers, that sort of thing. So all of those types of therapy, I stand behind. I believe that they're all beautiful in their own right, depending on what your story is and what you're trying to heal from and what elements you need to sort of unfuck, if you will. So all of that leads me to this table to talk about 52 card pick-me-up for just a minute. Having a tool that can help jog our memory, it's sort of like pre-workout for your brain. So there's mornings, you wake up, you don't want to do shit, you drink a cup of coffee or you have some pre-workout, you do something that would amp you up, that would push you forward, that would get you to the place that you want to be, but you need assistance, you need something else to help you get there, because just naturally in and of yourself, you're, for whatever reason, not getting to that place. So 52 card pick-me-up is, again, a tool I created to help us get there relatively quickly in one form or fashion. Here's the idea behind it. There are 52 cards in this deck. They have 4 different suits. Act would be one of them. Affirm would be another. Feel another. And need is the 4th suit. So in these suits, there are 13 corresponding words per suit, and the whole concept behind this, for me now, is to be able to identify something that would affirm me, something that I can act on, something that I may be feeling, and something that I may be needing, and I might not just be able to put words to those things on that day. The affirmation cards are obviously beautifully helpful. The action cards are some of the harder ones, because it would suggest that maybe we need to forgive somebody, or maybe we need to confess something to somebody, or maybe we need to start something today, something that we've been thinking about, pondering on. The need cards are good. They would suggest that we may need vulnerability, or we may need people, or we may need exercise, or we may need sleep. The feel cards are also relatively heavy insofar as I may feel anxious, or I may feel scared, or not all of it is built to be this like affirmation deck sort of thing. It's supposed to be a holistic experience with an affirmation, an action, a need, and a feeling. And so the way that I use the cards, and this is not how I designed them to use. When I first designed them, developed them, I had it set up more as a card game where you would pick 7 cards. What I found very quickly in my own use of the tool is that 7 things to process is a lot. There are some days that 4 is too many. So should you find yourself with a deck, what I would say is start this way, because it's the easiest and best place, I believe, for us to start, is to pick one of each suit and identify that way. But also, if that is too heavy on any particular day, just draw 1 card. Maybe it's all needs. You just know that you need something and you don't know what you need. So just draw 1 need card, or draw a couple, or draw until it makes sense to you. Like, I think the most confusing parts about this tool is that there's not a rule book. It really is designed for you to use as necessary, as you see fit, for the betterment of your mental and emotional health, as well as those around you. So the way that I use it is I shuffle the cards until I feel perfectly content. And then I sit with them with a little bit of intention or meditation or prayer. Any of those things are totally suitable. Whichever one gets you to a place of ease and calm and center, the best. And then I select my 4 cards, and then I will turn them over. And based on what I am seeing in front of me, and I'm just going to use these cards that I had as examples as the example. The affirmation is I am attractive. Thank you, cards, very much. Exercise is something that I may need, which I do think I need exercise. I'm a 40-year-old man who needs to move his body so that it stays functional. Feel stressed. I do actually feel some stress today about a myriad of topics, but some of them I can control more than others. And then the act is think twice. See, what's fun about this is I don't particularly know what think twice might mean today, but it gives me an opportunity to have kind of a log in my brain of like, and you don't have to force something to exist that doesn't exist. And so I'm sure that there will be times where one card just isn't as applicable or relevant to where you are today. Again, 3 things to pay attention to is plenty on any given day. So this tool is really beautiful, whether you've been walking through a journey of mental health for a long period of time, or you're just getting started into the journey. I still use it. I created it. I added all of the 52 phrases, words, cards. I know what they all say, and I still use it at the very least weekly, which is where the journal comes in. I created a journal called the Pick Me Up Journal. The first version of this was designed as daily, and that was a lot. So I redesigned it in a better size, and it's set up to be weekly. The reason I set it up to be weekly is because while we may pull cards multiple days a week if we need or have the desire to dig in like that, I believe that once a week to really like journal it out and dig in and dive in really is sufficient based on the other things that we're probably doing in our life. We probably have some other form of journaling or emotional outlet, whether that's writing or painting or drawing or singing or dancing. And we have jobs and work, and maybe you own a business. And so you have other things that you're writing down and journaling. And so without overwhelm, which is a big deal for me, in this tool, I did not want it to be overwhelming ever. So the prompts inside of the journal are one thing that I'm learning to love about myself. Summarize yesterday in 5 words. The cards I pulled today, it doesn't actually say 4, but the cards I pulled today, 1 action item from this week's cards, my primary focus for today, and honestly, that should probably say my primary focus for the week. So on revision, I'll revise that. And then there's a free space to journal, draw, doodle, write a poem, whatever it is that your heart is needing to do to express what's happening inside of you. You can feel free to do it there. And then the very last prompt is write down 1 out of control goal. That the out of control goal is something that you're striving for. It could be emotional, could be spiritual, could be financial, could be relational. What it is irrelevant to the fact that you're willing to write it down and make it a part of your practice. So the journal came into play because I kept participating and practicing with 52 card Pick Me Up, but I didn't have a log of how I've grown. And I'm personally a little bit disorganized, so I keep 1 journal in my car and 1 journal in my pocket and 1 journal on my notes in my phone and 1 on my computer. And so there's not a steady, consistent place for me to go find a log of how I've really gone on the journey with this deck of cards. So again, this episode is really special to me because I hope deeply that it allows you to find yourself in your journey where you are with a lot of grace. A lot of grace. If there's anybody on the planet that deserves as much grace as they can receive today, it's you. And so give yourself that grace. Be the deliverer of that grace to yourself and allow yourself the peace and the patience to slowly, steadily, consistently walk down this road. Just like working out, if you haven't been to the gym in a while and you go back to the gym and you try to do the same workout you did the last time at the gym after working out for a year straight, you're going to get hurt or you're at least going to be really, really sore. And so maybe it's been some time since you've journaled or really, dove into this journey. Take it easy. Our brains can be exhausted very quickly, especially with the stress and anxiety, and if you struggle with depression, if you're healing, if you've been through a recent traumatic experience that you're working through and healing from, our brains only have so much capacity to process information before we're just exhausted. And again, I don't want this to be overwhelming. I want it to be a really beautiful co-pilot to the journey that you're going down. So if you haven't stepped into a journey of mental health and you found yourself listening to this podcast, I want to applaud you. You're going to make great decisions walking down this journey. You also may make some bonehead dumbass decisions as you are healing and sort of flexing and fleshing out all of these different experiences, but you'll make a lot of beautiful decisions. If you've been walking down this road, you may be exhausted, and I'm going to tell you, just please pull up your bootstraps and keep going. If mental and spiritual and emotional health is something that you feel like you've done for a very long time and you've gone through a lot of healing and you find yourself in a place of peace mostly, and your anxiety is relatively low and your stress is relatively low, and you've been able to conquer a lot of the things that have been troublesome or problematic in your past, then I deeply applaud the work that you've put in. And I hope that you will allow yourself the ability to tell yourself you're proud of you, because you deserve that. And maybe you don't deserve is the right word, but you're worthy of that at the very least. And so I'm really proud of this tool. In the same way that I'm proud of my journey. I think with the details of my story, nobody would expect me to be sitting here doing this where I am. And I'm very proud of that. And so as somebody who has journeyed through mental and emotional health stuff for a very long time, been to multiple therapists through different practices of therapy, different modalities, different tools, I really truly do operate with a pretty dope sense of peace in my life, despite my life not being perfect and despite there being problems. I've been able to find peace in my heart faster than I used to. And that's all a sentiment to the journey that we walk down. And you're never walking this journey alone. So whether you're just starting the journey, or you've been in it for a long time, or you've done it for many, many, many years, you have a friend in us, this community. And if you ever need an encouraging word or somebody to tell you to just keep going, please reach out and send me an email or DM. But until next time, my friends, I am so grateful for you, for showing up, for listening, for participating, for being willing to show up for yourself as well as showing up for other people. So until next time, I will see you soon. Peace.